Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at what is going on in Calgary right now. So we're going to do our July 2022 market update, kind of go over some of the stats, what has happened in June, where the market is currently, and where we see it heading for the rest of the year. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So first things first, let's take a look at the sales and inventory numbers. They kind of tell us what the actual market is doing. And when we were looking at the beginning of the year and why prices skyrocketed out of seemingly nowhere, it was due to the fact that there was such low inventory in comparison to the amount of sales and the demand that was in the marketplace at the time. So when we take a look here at this chart, you can see that January, February, and it kind of peaked in March with our sales. They were all very, very close to the inventory level. And now, as we've seen it go into April, May, and now June with the most recent update, we can see that that gap is getting bigger and bigger. So sales have began to decline since the highs in March. We are now at 2,842 sales in the month of June. And interestingly enough, this is actually a 2.47% decrease versus last year. So this is the first time so far in 2022 that we've actually had less sales than we had in 2021. Now we look at inventory. Inventory compared to last year, we are still down considerably, about 1,000 listings, but inventory for right now, we have 5,405. This is a 3.94% increase from last month. So you can just see that it's getting a little bit wider between the sales and the inventory compared to the tight market conditions at the beginning of the year. So as we can see, because these are so far apart now, that is going to have some sort of effect on the prices because the demand does just not meet the actual inventory and what we have for supply right now. So when we take a look at the benchmark sales price in Calgary, this is the orange bar is 2022 and the blue is 2021. So you can still see we are way, way, way above where we were last year. 13.3% increase versus last year. That is a big gain across Calgary. And you can see the home price, the benchmark sales price has kind of stayed consistent. It dropped slightly compared to May in June. But that is just because there is so much more inventory, there is less buyer demand than there was before. So prices are slipping a slight little touch, nothing crazy, nothing to get concerned about. I don't see us heading into a crash or anything like that, but prices have softened slightly, not very noticeably. However, we do not see them going anywhere near where they were in 2021 or reverting back to those prices. So it is looking right now like we are going to kind of stay consistent through the summer. It will depend what happens in September, October, November, when it kind of picks up a little bit again to see where that benchmark price goes, especially to do with the interest rates and where that is at the time. So it is a little bit tough to say what's going to happen in the future. We can see right now it is slowing a little bit, which is probably a good thing. We couldn't keep up the pace that we were at a few months ago. So this is kind of giving everybody a chance to breathe, and we're headed a little bit back towards more balanced market where there's everything that kind of comes on sells versus being a complete seller's market where sellers are getting way over list price. However, it is still a seller's market, but it's just headed towards a balanced market. So average days on market, this just shows how quickly homes are selling on average in Calgary. This takes into consideration all property types, townhomes, apartments, detached homes, and semi-detached homes. So there's a lot included in there. I just like to look at this to see how quick things are going. Usually the lower days on market, quicker things are selling, more stuff is flying off the market, and the closer to list price it is becoming. So when we're looking at 2022 versus 2021, you can see we are still lower than where we were in 2021, which was still a great year for us. I think some people now think that 2022 is just so absolutely crazy that 2021 doesn't even matter, but 2021 was a great year, especially comparing to 2020. However, as you can see, there's still only 27 days on market versus last year we were at 34. So it is starting to trend up. This usually happens in the summer. It's not really a big deal. I don't think it's a cause for concern. It's just what happens with the seasonality of real estate. So we are still trending up. However, we are still a shorter days on market to where we were last year. So lots of people have been asking, well, why is it slowing down so dramatically? It does feel like we're just slamming on the brakes now. However, not truly the case, as it's just slowed down because there's the interest rate rising. It's the summer. It's kind of those two combinations, as well as there's more inventory than there's been all year. So now people aren't rushing around spending money right away. They have a little bit more time, a little bit more breathing room to make that decision. They don't have to pull the trigger on buying a house right away. So the main reason, though, that we are starting to see this slowdown and just a little bit of a cool off is the interest rate. So when we take a look at this chart for interest rates, you can see where we were in 2019, right around 1.7. So then big drop off in 2020 as soon as COVID hit. And now you can see that we are headed back up towards a 1.7. The Bank of Canada raised the target for its overnight rate by 50 basis points to 1.5% on June 1st. This is matching market expectations, and it likely signals that there will be interest rate hikes in the future. They are still more planned, so it will be interesting to see how far they go up as they try and battle all the inflation. It was the third consecutive rate hike, matching the magnitude of that from the bank's previous meeting and pushing borrowing costs to the highest level since the pandemic has actually started. So our interest rate is now the highest that it's been since the pandemic started. However, we are still not at pre-pandemic levels for the interest rate. So I think as it raises and raises, we will start to see the market cool off a little bit more. Money's not as cheap to borrow, and that's kind of what drove all the buyer demand in the first place, was that money was so cheap and there was not a lot of houses, so then that's why prices went up. But there were a lot of people getting into the market, buying investment properties, buying first properties, because it was so cheap to borrow money, and they could actually get something bigger than what they would have been able to afford when interest rates were at 1.7. So another big factor to take a look at now is Canada's inflation rate. So this is talked about a lot in the news. A lot of people are talking to us about inflation, and you kind of see it everywhere. It's happening all over the world. There is a lot of speculation about what is going to happen and how high it'll go. So right now, Canada is about 7.7% inflation rate. As you can see on this chart here, we are headed towards 8. At the moment, it's tough to say how or when this is going to slow down and where we will be even in 3, 4, 5 months. So interestingly enough, Canada is actually at its highest inflation rate since January of 1983. That is when the Saddle Dome was built in 1983. So that just puts it in perspective how long it is. We always say how old the Saddle Dome is. That is the last time that Canada saw inflation at this dramatic scale. So looking at all these factors combined, where do we see the market headed in the next few months? Now, it is a little tough to say with the interest rates, because that could really shake things up depending how high they go. And also with inflation, if people start pulling back on buying things and they're looking for more necessities than wants. So it is a little tough to judge where it is headed. Thankfully, RBC, the housing report came out, and it says that Calgary, the prices should stay level with where they've been at currently for the year. Shouldn't really see too much of a decline. This is due mainly in part to the fact that big centers like Vancouver and Toronto, and just in general in Ontario and BC, are so much more expensive to live in than here in Alberta. So that is going to be driving a lot of migration into Alberta. Therefore, our prices should stay pretty balanced with what they're at right now, stays firm. We're not going to see too many price declines. So it looks like for the rest of the summer, though, we will see it kind of slow down. Sales activity will be a little bit lower than normal. People are going on vacation. People are traveling again. Interest rates are going a little bit up, and now there's more inventory. So nobody's really in a rush right now. It will stay a little bit more calm and slow throughout the summer months. This is pretty regular. I've looked through lots of multiple past year reports, and they all say the same. So we probably won't see much pickup until second week of September, once people are settled in, the kids are in school, and get back into that routine. So don't see the prices slipping anytime soon. However, if you are a buyer right now, this is a great time because there's the most inventory and the least competition. So you have the most time to make a decision. You don't have to rush and just pick one and close your eyes and hope and pray that you get it. So really good. And while if you're looking at selling, it's good. The prices are staying firm. There are still people buying out there. It's just not at the crazy levels that we saw at the beginning of the year. So this is really good for everybody. A balanced market headed that direction. Really helps everybody win. Buyers win, sellers win, and just makes it a little bit easier for everybody to get what they want. So I won't dive into every single number about detached townhomes and everything like that, but I will leave a link to the full Calgary real estate market update down below. You can download it for your own viewing. Take a look through, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment below. We'd be happy to answer them for you. And while you're here, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, I'm Nathaniel Terryberry. We'll see you then.